Okay, so let's continue with graphing. When graphing quadratic equations, now we expect to get a curve. So for example, find the intercept and graph y equal x squared minus 4. So for this now, since we expect to get a curve, we need more than 2 points. Okay, so we set up our table again, x and y. We will set up for 3 points. We will have 1 0, 1 y-intercept and 2 x-intercepts. We will see why if you cannot remember when we factor out this x squared minus 4. So for our y-intercept, let's do our y-intercept first. We set x equal to 0, so we get y is equal to negative 4. So we have y equal negative 4. For our x-intercept, we need to set y equal to 0. So now remember when we solved quadratic equations, we set the quadratic equation to be equal to 0. So if we have 0 equal x squared minus 4, that's the same thing as if we're writing x squared minus 4 is equal to 0, right? Just turn it around. So remember how to solve quadratic equations? We need to factor this equation. Or right away we can factor. Remember we learned by factoring and by using the formula. Right away we can factor. This is the difference of two squares. X squared is a perfect square and 4 is a perfect square. And this right here, subtracting, so we have the difference of two squares. Remember when we have the difference of two squares, we factor, we get x as our first term in each parentheses, in each bracket. The square root of 4 is 2, so 2 is the second term, and the signs are plus, minus. So if we have x plus 2 times x minus 2 is equal to 0, either x plus 2 is equal to 0 or x minus 2 is equal to 0. So you write that x plus 2 is equal to 0 or x minus 2 is equal to 0. So we need to have x by itself on the left hand side. When we transpose a number or any term across the equal sign, remember that we need to change the sign if we're adding or subtracting. So a positive 2, if we transpose it across the equal sign, we're left with a negative 2. X here, we have a negative 2 transposing across the equal sign, so we're left with a positive 2. So our x-intercepts are 2 and negative 2. So now we can plot the graph. We draw a graph, or our axis. X and y, we have negative x, negative y, 0. Right, so we do not always need to label our axis 1, 2, 3, 4. We can do them in multiples as long as the entire axis is the same or it's consistent with the multiples. So if I am using multiples of 2 across the x-axis on this side, I need to use multiples of 2 on this side. Same thing with the y-axis. This would be negative 2, negative 4. So what we're doing now, we can plot the graph y-intercepts. Okay, so our first intercept or y-intercept is 0, -4. So 0 on the x-axis, -4 on the y-axis is right here. We label it 0, -4. Remember, we need to label our points and label the graph, label the line or the curve with the equation that we're graphing. Our x-intercepts, we have two x-intercepts. When y is equal to 0, we have x is equal to 2 and x is equal to -2. So we label this 2, 0, -2, 0. So for a curve, we do not want to use a ruler. We go ahead and freehand the curve. We label our curve with the equation y equal to x squared minus 4. Okay, so that is a complete exercise or example. I'll give you another example when it comes to graphing quadratic equations. This one, y equal x squared minus 5x plus 6. So again, we set up our table so that we can find the x and y intercepts. Remember, we have one y-intercept, that's where x is equal to 0. In this case, because our equation is y equal to the quadratic equation, if we had x equal to some quadratic equation with y, it would be that x had only one intercept. And we understand more when we go on to solve or substitute for these zeros. So for our y-intercept, when y is equal to 0, we get 0 is equal to x squared minus 5x plus 6. I'm sorry, this is the, right, let's continue. This is the x-intercept. The x-intercept is when y is equal to 0. X-intercept is when y is equal to 0. Okay, so we get that. So if we write that, we rewrite it x squared minus 5x plus 6 is equal to 0. To solve for x, we need to solve the quadratic equations. So we have a quadratic equation here. This is a trinomial. Remember, when we factor a trinomial, we end up with the product of two binomials. And how do we get the values in this? Remember, we can either go ahead and use the formula, but I want to go ahead and use the factoring method that we learned previously. We need to find two factors of 6 that when we add them, we get -5. Okay? So if I list factors of 6, let's do that up here. If I list factors of 6, I get 1 times 6, 2 times 3. I can add 2 and 3 to get 5, yes? But I need -5. -5 is equal to -2 plus a -3. Or -2 and a -3. Remember, when we're adding two negatives, we don't need that negative sign inside. So +6 can also equal to -2 times -3. Remember, negative times negative gives us a +6. So those are our two numbers that we put in. We put x as our first term in each binomial. And we have -2, -3. So we have x minus 2 equal to 0 or x minus 3 equal to 0. Therefore, x is equal to 2. If we transpose a -2 across the equal sign, we get +2. Same here. We transpose a -3 across the equal sign, we get +3. So we fill those in here, 2 and 3 for our x-intercepts. For our y-intercept now, we need to set x equal to 0. So we get y is equal to 0 squared minus 5 times 0 plus 6. Y is equal, 0 squared is 0, 5 times 0 is 0, we're left with a positive 6. So those are our three coordinates for this quadratic equation to plot on the graph. 0, 6, 2, 0, 3, 0. Okay. So 0, y, x. So 2, 4, 6, 2, 4, 6. So I need to plot 0, 6, 0 on the x-axis, 6 on the y-axis. That's my y-intercept, where my graph will cut or cross the y-axis. And my x-intercepts are where my graph will cross the x-axis. So my x-intercepts are 2, 0. So 2 on my x-axis, 0 on the y-axis. 0 means I don't go anywhere on the direction of the y-axis. I just stay on the horizontal axis. So I get 2, 0, and also 3, 0. This is so far, you can graph this curve. This is a curve, but it's funny. So let's just add one point. We can choose the number 4 on the x-axis since we're going in that direction. Let's choose the number 4. So we just substitute in the equation. So if we substitute for 4 in the equation, let's see, y 4 as x, right? This is in the x place. So y is equal to 4 squared minus 5 times 4 plus 6. 16 minus 20 plus 6. 16 minus 20 is negative 4 plus 6 will give us a positive 2. So we get another point here. So we need to plot 4, 2. So 4 on the x-axis, 2 on the y-axis will be right here. So we can continue our curve so that it looks a little more curvy, right? And remember, we need to label the graph. So this equation of this graph is y equal to x squared minus 5x plus 6. And there we've completed another example of how to graph quadratic equation. Okay.